Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the South Jersey Starting 9 podcast, your home for all things South Jersey baseball, from the high school level to the collegiate level to everything in between, including the professionals, as we've got a fantastic finale to our preseason coverage coming up. I'm your host, Dan Wilkins, along with my co-host, David Cohen of Rowan University, well, we've got the Tri-County Conference that we're going to talk about today. We've gone through the 4 other South Jersey conferences during our previews. We had the BCSL in episode 4. Episode 5 was the Cape Atlantic. Episode 6 was the Colonial and the Olympic. We eventually, if not very soon, are going to put together a playlist on YouTube that you can easily access all of the SJSN episodes, just because it's going to make them easier to label, and if you want to go back and look at your team and I guess you could say expose what we got wrong, that will make it easier for you to do that. So listen, it's a service from me to you to make it easier for us to get clowned for saying that your team was only going to win 10 games when they actually won 15. But as it goes, this is a pre-recorded episode. We're recording this right around 10:30 in the morning on Thursday the 19th. This is going to air around 6 o'clock in the evening. We had a little... this is going to be how it's going to go for some of the season. I think you've seen already that our schedules are definitely very different, and as it goes along, we are going to try to get together as often as we can for these in-season episodes, because baseball actual competition starts as soon as Monday, which is incredible. We talked about baseball being around the corner. Now it's basically
Finally here.
it's here.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about that. We have not determined yet what we're going to do in terms of how frequent we're going to air episodes. We may do some virtually over Zoom if we can't find a time to meet together. I mean, he's about 30 minutes away from where I am, so it is a bit of a hike to get here. And we just work it out with our personal schedules. So please bear with us, and we are going to hopefully enjoy this 2026 season, which I'm very excited about. We've got 43 games on our baseball schedule. I believe this is our first episode since I unveiled the schedule back. We released it we released it on, I want to say,
Saturday.
I think it was really, yeah, you're right. It was released on Saturday. We recorded on Sunday. So a bit of a rare double week for us, but as it goes, we might find a way to meet sometimes in the regular season or in the playoffs. I mean, there's 9 weeks of regular season play. If you meet once a week, you get 9 episodes out of it in season. But just know that it's not guaranteed to be consistent, because as it goes, I have a job. I go to school. He has a job. He goes to school. We're college kids.
We're also out covering these games.
We're also out covering the games as well. So we'll have to talk about it with what we're going to do. But I'm very excited for what this baseball season has to offer, and we are incredibly proud and glad that we are able to bring this coverage to you, to your living rooms, wherever you may be. But we're going to talk about the Tri-County Conference today. We are, again, only 4 days away from the season starting, and what we're going to do, just for I guess you could say a preface to our coverage, is that we are going to talk about the 4 Tri-County divisions. The first 2, the small school divisions, the Classic and the Diamond, and then we're going to flip it back to a new segment that we're going to add called Coming Up for DWB. And that's a tentative title, but tentative as in I made it up 5 seconds ago because I wanted to put a title on it. We're going to talk about the games that we have in the upcoming week for DWB. So assuming that we record later in the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to talk about what's coming ahead. So the week of March 23rd to March 28th, we're going to talk about the, as of now, 4 scheduled baseball games on DWB. And I think we just talked about it before we hit the record button, but it's going to make it a lot easier than doing a full selection show, which would require us to commit to a lot of things. And one philosophy that I have, people ask me about my scheduling philosophy sometimes, and I'll say that I do schedule more games than I know I can get to, but it's for the sake of, I know rain will happen, and I know that there will be cold days, and I know there will be days where things come up in my life, things come up in everybody's lives, and, we won't be able to make it out to a game or whatever. We had a stretch last year where we had like 3 or 4 days of basically no baseball whatsoever, one at the beginning and one at the end of the year. So as much as the schedule is tightly packed now, it may not be that way later on. So just want to give everybody that disclaimer, just because I do value the fact that we want to get to everywhere. We want to get to as many places as possible, but we are also human. I am also human, and I have to work. I have to keep up with schoolwork and all that. So I just wanted to make that clear before we began because it is a daunting season, and people do ask me, "Oh, why do you do this game instead of this game?" And I'm like, "Well, listen, I want to be everywhere. I want to be one of those companies that can have multiple different crews in every single place. But if I had the money to do that, this is not what our studio would look like.
No.
It would not be in my living room with my camera tripod straddled between the two chairs of my couch. That's not that's not exactly the most high quality setup, but we work with it, we live with it. That's what we do. Let's
Gets the
talk about
job done.
it gets the job done. That's exactly what you got to do. Let's talk about the Tri-County Conference. First team that we're going to talk about, the Pennsville Eagles. Pennsville only it sounds crazy to say, but this is the 10-year anniversary of their 2016 state championship run. Went 23-7 in that year. They beat Waldwick in the state final, beat Pittman in the sectional final, and last year they looked pretty good. 15-9. Was upset by Woodstown. I don't know how much you want to call a 6 versus 3 an upset. I say I would, but it was a 2-1 final over at the MSI complex in Pennsylvania. Kind of a rare situation, but they beat Salem in the first round, fell to Woodstown, and what I'll say about Matt Carr as a head coach is that he is very ambitious, and I like that for the fact that he doesn't, even in his tri-county endeavors, he doesn't have to play Gloucester Catholic
Yeah.
every year, but he does, and they held Gloucester Catholic to their own. They lost 4-3 to them. They beat Williamstown. That's a Group 4. They fell by 1 run to Millville. That's also a Group 4. And they also beat Lenape just before the cutoff. That was also a Group 4. And they also played Eastern and Ocean City and Cumberland as well. And Cumberland, that was a game that they probably should have won. But in retrospect, one of the reasons why Pennsville was seated so high was not because they won their division, or not just because they won their division and went 7-1, but it was also because of who they played in non-conference play. And Pennsville definitely was up to the task in 2025, and they're going to now look to replace that in 2026 with a relatively large senior class.
Yeah, Pennsville. I really like the way they schedule. When they're looking for a game, me and you both know that they're going to post on Twitter and they'll play whoever reaches out. That's what happened with that Ocean City game. That was a late ad. That was the week that there was that rain, like you were talking about, where everything got canceled. But for Pennsville this year, yeah, like you said, a large senior class, and they got the guys that can get the job done. I think this division is going to be wide open this season for the most part. Uh, some guys I'm looking at: Mason O'Brien, two-way player, outfield pitcher. Uh, sorry, some offense here. We have Jeff Wagner. He hit 333 last year as a junior.
Yeah, I definitely like his style.
Yep.
Definitely a bigger first baseman, somebody that can slug the ball.
Yeah, but 15-9 last year for Pennsville. That was They definitely did not want to lose that game to Woodstown. That's kind of a rivalry, two close schools in relative size, and both Group 1 schools, obviously. But Pennsville, I think they can go deep this year in Group 1, especially because we're going to talk about Pittman in a little bit. Pittman might have some down guys that lost a lot of talent there.
Yeah, in Pennsville, it's one thing to have a relatively large senior class, but the difference is with a Pennsville team, they didn't actually lose that many guys. You're talking about Mason O'Brien. His older brother, Peyton O'Brien, was one of the ones that graduated. And then you had Connor Starn, 258 hitter. But you also had Chase Birchfield, who's a Division I athlete, now at LaSalle. And you had Luke Wood, who commanded a 1.63 ERA and 66 Ks and over 50 innings of work after having a bad injury in his junior year. I can't remember what it was exactly, but he's now over at McDaniel, which is a pretty good Division III team. So, he's built himself up a career as a very good hard-throwing left-hander, and Pennsville is going to miss that. They don't have anybody on their staff besides Logan Copperthwaite, who had 7.2 scoreless innings. They have nobody else except for Logan Copperthwaite that had a sub-4 ERA on their staff. And they had a 3.06 ERA as a team, so it was darn good. And then a 3.29 average on top of that. You had Birchfield, who hit 486, had 4 homers, 34 RBIs. And then you had Cohen Petritz, who hit 419 with 27 RBIs. You probably have half of your runs batted in from last year gone.
Yeah,
and that's
it's a good
177.
point.
Luke Wood had 14 of them. Connor Starn had 19 of them. Cohen Petritz had 27. And then looking at the other names, Chase Birchfield had 34. I'm not going to do the math on the fly because we do have to get through 22 teams, but you add up the numbers and it's close to somewhere in the 80 to 90 range where you're losing about half of your offensive production just in terms of RBIs. And there's other numbers you can go through, but at the high school level, you don't really need sabermetrics to tell you that losing half of your offensive production and losing a lot of your pitching is not going to make you far and away higher than everybody else. Now, do I think that Pennsville is still talented? Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think that
yep.
they can still compete in this division for sure, but the road is going to be a lot harder, and it's not going to be, I wouldn't say last year was easy either, but I don't think that it's going to be, a cakewalk for anybody.
I would agree with that. I mean, like you said, they lost a lot, obviously, running through those numbers, but they still have the talent, they have the experience to get the job done, and I think they can.
And Pennsville, they went 7-1 in the Tri County Classic last year. Their one loss in divisional play was to Pittman on opening day, April 2nd. So they they ended up losing their first game to Pittman, and then after that they went 7-0. They beat Pittman in their second meeting, 2-1. They beat Wildwood twice, they beat Clayton twice, and they beat Salem twice. So that's what they needed to do. And whether or not this division goes to 6 teams, I don't know if it will with Salem Tech joining it. As of now, Pennsville does not have a game scheduled with Salem Tech, so I'm not exactly sure where they're lining up. We mentioned many episodes ago, many moons ago, when we were talking about Salem Tech that they would be in either the Classic or the Diamond. Looking like to me that they may go into the Diamond now that we're talking about the scheduling alignment. But at the same time, it's also before the season starts, and not everybody's schedule is up to date online. So we don't know for sure yet. And to preface that, I'll say we're not going to do a full quote deep dive on Salem Tech because we can't really talk about them yet. They haven't played a
Yep,
game,
yep.
so we don't know what's gonna happen, and we don't know where they're gonna line up.
We
But
don't even have a roster yet for
no, so it would be unfair to make any assumptions about them because it's so early and they haven't played any games yet. But yeah, I think Pennsville's going to be good, and I could say that for a lot of teams in the Tri County Conference. They are South Jersey's largest conference by membership, 22 teams. When I say that they can be competitive, does that mean that they're going to go for a state title? Who knows?
yeah.
We don't know who's going to be on the road to Rutgers this year. But when we talk about Group 1 in general, you look at the Group 1 standings from last year, the top 4 teams, Audubon, Shalleck, Pennsville, and Pittman, all had big senior classes. Maple Shade was a bit of a surprise at number 5, and then 6 through 8, Woodstown, Riverside, and Palmyra. If I'm looking at those 8 teams, and I'm looking at who they graduated and who's returning on their roster, I have no idea who's going to be at the top of the card in Group 1. Maybe Audubon and Shalleck are going to be the 1 and 2 again, but I think that Group 1 definitely creates a big opportunity for a sleeper team to come through, a team that wasn't in the top 8 last year to come through, make a run, strike when the time is right, make something happen.
Agreed, yeah, and I think the Group 1 South champion is going to come out of this Tri County. They have a lot of Group 1 schools, Pittman, Pennsville, and Shalleck, and to mention some. But yeah, Group 1, it's wide open. Most of these groups are wide open. I would say Group 4, probably not. I mean, like, that's Eastern Cherokee there and maybe Kingsway. But these smaller groups, Group 1 and Group 2, they're always wide open.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Pittman. I actually got to see Pittman yesterday. Got to see them versus Mastery Charter in a scrimmage. They won that game 10-7, and Pittman also had a big senior class. But they're also another team that, last year, 2024, let's say, they had a big senior class. They had the Sharkey brothers. They had Stephen Devaney. They had a lot of talent that graduated on that 2024 team. 2025 was the backup to 2024, and then they all graduated. They had Jackson Austin, who was a solid hitter. Jackson Austin and Jake Sharrow, now both at Salem Community College playing for the Mighty Oaks under John Holt. You had Nick Watson, the St. Augustine transfer. He went yard 7 times last year, and I forget exactly where he's playing, but he was another strong shortstop who combined with Hudson Rue over there, who's now at Messiah, they were almost unstoppable in the middle infield. So when I look at what Pittman now has, where on their roster that they have online, they have 9 sophomores and 1 senior. That's Drew Keefe. This is going to be a rebuilding year for Pittman, And again, that's not an indicator that they're going to be good or bad. But when I talk about the Panthers, a team that went 16-9 last year, I think that it's even evident in their scheduling that they seem like they're taking a step back. Some of their non-conference games that they're playing Mastery Camden in the regular season. They're playing Camden Academy Charter in the regular season, both independent schools out of Camden. They're also playing far fewer colonial schools. That John Hopley used to play 5 or 6 colonial conference schools in a season. He would play Haddon Township, Paulsboro, Gloucester City, West Deptford, Sterling. They would play all of those, but now the only one that he has on his schedule from the colonial is Paulsboro. So as it is, this is a bit of a lighter schedule that Pittman's doing, and whether or not they'll compete in 2026 is a question mark, but I think that it's pretty clear that if John Hopley plays his cards right, he's been at this Pittman program for a while, he knows that the numbers are not going to be the same as 2025, and the registration, the amount of players on your team, that's not going to be the same as last year. This may be a rebuilding year for Pittman, but I see it as a net benefit because when you have two large senior classes back to back, you got to start somewhere, and they looked pretty sharp in the scrimmage I saw yesterday.
Yeah, for Pittman, first of all, their biggest non-conference test is going to be Delran. There, I think that's a good schedule.
I think that's a very good game.
Yeah, two small schools, but for Pittman, you mentioned these two large classes. Now this year they're only going to graduate one, so this is going to be a benefit. Even if this has to be a down year, next year with all those guys coming back, it's going to be a good year, I think, next year. And I think they still have a good 1-2 punch this year with Kieran and Clark and Drew Keefe on the mound. Those are two guys that can pitch.
Yeah, Kieran and Clark, I got to see him on opening day. We got to see him on opening day last year. Didn't only saw him for one inning, but the way he throws 18.1 inning, 18 and a third innings, 25 Ks. Not all of those games were in high leverage situations, but for a freshman, he was really impressive. And I think that his delivery, the fact that he's a bit more of an old school style pitcher, somebody who doesn't throw all that hard, but he's got a lot of drop on that curveball, something that starts way up here and then goes way down. You don't see that in a lot of pitchers anymore. A lot of times they like to go with a sweeper, something that has a lot of lateral movement. Clark has a curveball that goes with a lot of vertical and I don't know, y-axis movement. There we go. But then you've got Carter Snyder, who was his numbers didn't really show it, but he's a really solid hitter, somebody who's got a lot of fundamentals in his swing. Liam Bialy, I got to see yesterday. Cole Austin, Braden Geary, a good defensive pick as well. This is again a division that's wide open, and the way that these guys are playing, it's very unclear who is going to be ahead. And when I talk about Pittman, when I talk about the Panthers, this is a team that actually had one more win on Pennsville in the overall record at 16-9, but they also had a similar fate in the South Jersey Group 1 playoffs. They lost in the semifinals to Maple Shade in what some would consider an upset if you break it down by the numbers, number 5 versus number 4. So if you look at the Tri-County Classic, you've got Pennsville and Pittman with 9 losses, and then Clayton, Salem, and Wildwood all with 13 losses. It's pretty even. And if those two teams bump down a step, where does Clayton, Salem, and Wildwood fit in? I don't know. I mean, let me just say that while I think that this division's going to be close, I don't think that these 3 teams in particular, or these 5 teams, are all going to project upwards.
Yeah.
I think that some are going to project up, some are going to project down, and then they're going to meet in the middle to make kind of a middle of the road division. And I think that if you ask me, the Diamond division is looking like it's going to have more talent than the Classic this year, when last year it was a little bit more even between the two.
Yeah, this division easily could be where all 5 teams go 500 in division play.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a shocker in my opinion. But Pennsville and Pittman, are they going to carry the top again, or maybe Clayton, Salem, and Wildwood? Maybe they sneak in some wins there.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Cal American. There wasn't a team that was particularly bad or a team that was having a down year. The team with the fewest amount of wins in the Cal American was Millville with 9, but they still had 13 losses. Nobody in the Cal American had had more than 13 losses. But then you also had St. Augustine, who had 18 wins, and Mainland, which had 17. So I don't know if there is a division in South Jersey that can really compare to what the Tri-County Classic is like, because it's a specifically small school division. And I like how the Tri-County is set up with the fact that they have 2 divisions on the big side, 2 divisions on the small side. I do think that that's admirable. So when you look at what these five teams are going to do, where will they end up in June? We have no idea. But when we look at the Tri County Classic, where do you say that they fall? Because Pennsville and Pittman all had big senior classes, and Clayton, Salem, and Wildwood, they're on. They may be on the way up. So who knows? But we're going to transition to talk about the Clayton Clippers and then the Salem Rams and then the Wildwood Warriors. Clayton led by Nick Ambrosius, 8-13 last year, 3-5 in the Tri County Classic. They picked up a pretty big win over Pittman in mid-April last year, but they definitely had some poor streaks. They lost 6 games in a row in April last year. That included some mercy rule losses to Glassboro, Shalleck, and Pennsville, and Overbrook as well. It's one thing to lose, but it's also another thing to lose in mercy rule fashion. I don't know where Clayton's going to be without the Monera brothers. Obviously, you had Mike Monera, who was a class of 2024 guy, but then you had Mark Monera, who was a class of 2025 guy. Monera hit 255, but he was a star on the mound, 2.04 ERA, really held down that Clayton rotation. But at the same time, Clayton is also 5 wins better than they were last year, so I don't really know where to judge them.
I would agree with that. We don't. I couldn't tell you where they're going to finish this year. We also like some of these teams. We don't know what they have yet. I mean, like we don't know how practice is going in this first week, but they had a 6.23 ERA, team ERA last year, and they lost their top arm in Mark Monera, as you mentioned, who 2.04 ERA last year. I don't know where they're going to go. David Chapa is maybe 28 innings last year, 6.50 ERA, but offense, they got some guys that can hit. Landon Tice, who's catcher, 306 last year. It's hard to judge this Clayton team. That's all I really have to say about them.
I think really all the 3 teams that finished near the bottom of the Tri County Classic are all going to be very tough to judge. What I will say is that looking at Salem Tech's schedule, it does look like they're going to be in the Tri County Classic because they do play Clayton twice. They just don't have the other teams listed on the schedule yet, so they're going to fill that in. But yeah, I think looking at Clayton's schedule, I like the fact that they're scheduling Overbrook, the only Group 2 in the Tri-County Diamond. They also get to play Cumberland, which is another team that I don't really know where they're going to land. So when you have this much variability, it's definitely a tough team to judge. But they have a relatively young roster, and Nick Ambrosius is a good head coach. I last saw Clayton back in 2024. I want to say they played. I think it was Pittman. They played back in 24. So forgive me, but it's been a while. I do think that Clayton probably fits in well in this Tri-County Classic. If Pittman has a down year, they could slide into second place. Who knows? But it's going to be, as we've said, like a broken record over and over again. It's going to be a very tough division to judge. But we've got the Salem Rams to talk about. They were 7-13 last season, and to talk about Salem is to talk about a team that definitely gets forgotten about when talking about Salem County baseball. This is going to be Eric Feiser's second year, or rather third year at the helm, took over in 2023. But just like Clayton had a 5-win improvement, Salem had a 3-win improvement. They went to 7-13. Their big bats that they had last year, there was Andrew May, who was a senior. I really liked him as a defensive catcher, somebody who framed pitches really well. Got to see him, I think, during his sophomore year versus Audubon. But then Chase Davis, another senior. There were only 2 homers on the team, and both came from seniors, Chase Davis and Andrew May. But one thing about Salem, definitely need to work on the pitching. 9.16 team ERA, and the 296 or 269 batting average as a team isn't bad per se. Pittman and Pennsville were obviously higher up, but you also had Terrell Robinson, fantastic player to watch, but he batted .438. Now he's walked at graduation. So the best player that they have returning, probably Bryce Harris, eight walks, 9 RBIs, 277 hitter. Just like Clayton, a team that's very hard to project. And again, forgive me, I haven't seen Salem in a long time. They lost in the first round to Pennsville, 19-2. That's definitely something that, if you're Eric Feiser going into the 2026 training camp, you're going to want to highlight that and say, hey, let's not do that. Let's get better. Let's play better. They're going to be playing in the Jim Kelly tournament again at Gloucester. That's, I believe, Gloucester, Shalleck, Glassboro, and Salem that are in that tournament this year. That's going to be the second weekend, the third weekend in April, Saturday the 18th. So, again, very hard team to judge.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Salem, I think they got mercied a lot last year, but you said they had the 3-win improvement. I think an improvement, any improvement would benefit this program. They did have a lot of pitchers last year, so they got some guys there coming back. So we'll see what happens as the season goes on.
Yeah, and again, when we talk about teams like Clayton and Salem, that I don't have a lot of info on because I haven't seen them, and I'm just looking at the records and stats online. When you talk about these teams, you have to give a little bit of grace because again, you look at the scores and you say, oh, they got blown out by this guy or they got blown out by this team. What I'll say is that when we talk about these teams, you don't see the action on the field, and it's different to where are they improving in the win column or are they just improving fundamentally? And are they on their way there? So we're going to talk about Wildwood though. I get to see them on Monday, opening day, led by Coach Rich Hans, who's got to have some great conversations with him. He's been the head coach of this team for a while, and they've had some good years. Listen, they made it to the Group One semis back in 2016, um, and they definitely had some iffy years post COVID, but their best season that they had in the last 5 years was definitely 2024. Went 17-11, 4-4 in the Tri County Classic, but finished third in the division behind Pennsville and Pittman. And then they won a playoff game at home. They had the number 7 seed, fell to Gloucester though 8-4, and maybe with a little bit of grace they'll be riding this last Tri County Conference season that they have before they move to the Cape Atlantic a little bit differently. But their non-conference schedule looked a lot different than they did last year. They played Wildwood Catholic 3 times last year as compared to 2024. Played Cape May Tech. I mean, listen, let's just say it is entirely expected, and if not, it is entirely reasonable for a team like Wildwood that is over an hour away from their other 4 TCC Classic opponents to play almost exclusively Cape Atlantic teams in their non-conference schedule. They played, again, Wildwood Catholic, Pleasantville, Buna, what were the other ones? Lower Cape May, ACIT, and then they played Lower Cape May a second time. So when you're in that kind of predicament, I can't really blame them for what they're doing, but it's going to be a lot easier next year when they leave the Tri-County.
Yeah, agreed. And I would like to when they go back to the Cal, I would like to see what their non-conference looks like. Maybe they'll expand out, or maybe they'll still play some of these tri-county teams.
Yeah.
But you look at last year for Wildwood, 7 of their 13 losses were in the division. So going into this year, if they can pick up some of those division wins, they could be back at 500 or even finish over 500.
Yeah, circling back to what you said about the non-conference schedule, I think it really all depends on the athletic department and like what Tom Kelly thinks and what they think that they're going to be able to accomplish. Because the last major move that we had in conference play, I mean, I think about Washington Township moving from the Olympic to the Tri-County, or RV moving from the BCSL to the Olympic. That's one thing. Last thing that comes to mind for me, at least locally, for me was Overbrook and Gloucester swapping places in the Colonial and Tri-County. Gloucester still plays a lot of Tri-County opponents in their non-conference play. You don't really see the same for Overbrook. They play Audubon a few times. They might play Haddon Heights or a handful of others, but they aren't like incessantly playing Colonial Conference opponents. So if you're Wildwood, you can probably get away with playing a couple of the smaller Shore Conference schools. But the thing is with the Cal, I was talking with Will Morris about this of St. Augustine, and one of the things that he said was that in the Cape Atlantic, there aren't a lot of Group 1s, but they're going to have to figure out a way to get in there. And when it comes to the teams that are there, and when it comes to the teams that will be there, like for example, the group ones that they have, there's only 3 in the Cape Atlantic after Wildwood joins. Wildwood will be the third. Buna and Cape May Tech will be the only other Group 1s in the Cal. But then you have a lot of Group 2s. You have Cedar Creek, LCMR, Middle, Oakcrest, Pleasantville. That's 5. Group 3s are Gammy, Hamilton, Mainland, and Ocean City, and then you have 6 Group 4s: Atlantic City, ACIT, Bridgeton, Egg Harbor, Millville, and then Vineland. Well, we're seeing a Group 1 versus a Group 4 on Monday because Wildwood is playing Bridgeton. So you could probably see Wildwood still scheduling Cumberland or I don't even would have to look at who are the small schools in the Shore Conference because they could probably get some teams out of Ocean
Yep.
County. It would be interesting to see them play a team like New Egypt or uh,
Manchester Township.
Manchester Township, yeah, Henry Hudson, Asbury Park, like those teams that you just go straight up to Garden State Parkway and they're along the shoreline. Maybe Point Pleasant Beach, that's a Group 1 powerhouse in baseball. Point Pleasant Borough's right around there too, they're Group 2. But again, it all depends on the athletic department. I think that if you're Wildwood, I was a little bit conflicted about Wildwood going to DeKalb at first, and it seems very obvious because it's the fact that Pennsville is an hour and a half away. Pittman is about an hour 15. Clayton is the closest at right around an hour. And then Salem is right around the same at an hour 10, hour 15. And when we had this debate many months ago, many moons ago about traveling for football playoffs, we said, well, these teams should be closer to each other for football playoffs so that they don't have to travel as much. I said, well, get out of there with that because in Texas you can travel 6 hours for a football game and get halfway across the state. So in New Jersey you can drive from Sunset Beach in Cape May and go all the way up to the Northern Highlands in Warren and Sussex County, and you can drive there in about 3 hours to get to the Tri-States Monument that connects PA and New York. So if it takes 3 hours to traverse the state and then an hour and a half to traverse the state west to east, why do we care about travel? But that's for the playoffs. In the regular season, if you're Wildwood and you have to go an hour plus each direction, let's say you play 10 divisional games, or in their case it would be 8 divisional games, that's 4 road trips that you have to make that are over an hour. No other team in South Jersey has to do that. No other team really in New Jersey has to do
You're
that.
already at a disadvantage. Yeah.
You're already at a competitive disadvantage because those players have to make those bus trips that nobody else has to make. Now, if you're talking about something like ice hockey, where they have to travel a lot farther, like for example, when Gloucester Catholic, we work with Gloucester Catholic for their boys ice hockey team. They play St. Peter's Prep, they play St. Joe's Metuchen or Montvale, Seton Hall Prep, all those guys. When you play those, that's different. But those are also parochial schools that can have charter buses and can have a little bit more amenities. When you're in a cold, frigid school bus with those like seat belts that are falling apart at the at the shoulder, and it's a bumpy ride on the Garden State Parkway or on the Atlantic City Expressway, wherever you're going, or on 55, if you're Wildwood, you have to make a choice, and the choice was to either keep traveling an hour plus to these faraway schools and take that competitive disadvantage to play teams in the TCC, or take the competitive disadvantage of playing fewer Group 1 schools and always punching above your weight and join the Cape Atlantic, which is a lot more advantageous in, let's just say, geography. So I'm sure that there were a lot of conversations had with athletic director Tom Kelly and with the coaches at Wildwood, because I'll tell you one program that doesn't have a problem with that at Wildwood is girls basketball, because they're amazing over there. They beat my alma mater twice. So when it comes to Wildwood athletics, I'm not even talking about baseball. I'm talking about the grand scope. How what decision do you make? And obviously, the ultimate decision was to leave the Tri-County, join the Cape Atlantic, but it definitely was something that I had to think about, because would they rather punch above their weight every single time, except for when they play Cape May Tech and Buna, or Wildwood Catholic for that matter, because that's a very small parochial school? And would you rather have that, or would you rather take the hike every single time that you have to play an away game for every single sport? I'm sure that's a lot of money to get those buses fueled up too. With how diesel gas is, an hour each way, you probably got to fill up the tank every single time you go to an away game. I'm just saying, I know that's getting really obscure, but like, it's a real reality that they probably have to face, and that's why they left the Tri-County after some 25 years.
Yeah, I don't think it was a tough decision for the athletic department to go back to the Cal. Like geography-wise, you're talking about, it's a lot closer. Even if you're going to have to play these better teams for some of the Wildwood programs, you have an advantage in some point because you're losing that disadvantage of traveling.
Right, and you're going to get, it's probably in their mind it's going to even out a little bit. So. Yeah. Listen, let's talk about the baseball team. We were just talking about buses and everything for a second there, but let's talk about the actual baseball team while we're at it. 2024, as we said, they were 17-11. Got a 7-win disadvantage coming off of last year, 10-13, 5.49 ERA, 0.258 batting average. They definitely had a lot of base running. I mean, 85 walks, 84 stolen bases. Their best player that's returning, probably, I would have to say, is either Liam Carmel or Trevor Troiano. The Troiano twins, Gianni and Trevor, both hit over 250 last year, but Trevor Troiano had 7 RBIs, 14 hits, six of his pardon, he had 20 hits, and 6 of his 20 hits were extra base hits, which makes for a darn good percentage. And also a 339 hitter with 14 walks and 10 stolen bases. Again, this is a team that liked to steal a lot, but they had a couple of guys graduate, like Brian Cuniff, who was a great right-hander for them. Put up a bit of a higher ERA than he would have liked, but a great two-way player for this Group 1 program. And then R.J. Blanda, who hit 321 with 15 stolen bases.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this team on Monday against Bridgeton, as you mentioned earlier. That's where we're heading for our high school opening day game. But um, Michael McWade, freshman last year, 8 and 2/3, .81 ERA. I'm excited to see him. He's definitely going to get more innings with the loss of Brian Cuniff, who 34 and a third innings last year. He ate up most of their innings, and so I mean, like Trevor Troiano, as you mentioned, 44 innings last year. That's a lot. So they got some pitchers that can pitch Wildwood, and they got some guys that can hit. And I think it's going to be an okay year for Wildwood.
Let's slide over to the Tri-County Diamond. We talked about the Classic. We talked about how we talked about ad nauseum about how it's going to be a very tough division to win, and it may result in a lot of teams being stuck around the 500 mark without a lot of clear paths in sight. But we'll talk about the Shalleck Cougars. Obviously, they do not need an introduction. One of South Jersey's best teams last year, 22-3, 8-0 in the Tri-County Diamond, picked up their first ever, not their first ever, but their first sectional championship in 33 years over Audubon back in June, fell to Middlesex in the state semifinal, who ended up winning the whole thing over Midland Park. But this is a team that their 3 losses were to Haddonfield, which was in the first round of the Diamond. Pretty big upset for what it's worth, but then Haddonfield ended up going on that run. You had Pennsville, which was, I'm pretty sure, a post-cutoff game between the division winner of the Diamond and the division winner of the Classic. That was going to be a good game no matter what. But then the teams that they did beat, they beat Rancocas Valley by 7 runs. We were there for that game, and Lucas D'Agostino threw 5 innings. Even though RV started to come back in the end, that was a great game for Shalleck, and I think that was the game in mid-April that kind of put them on the map because they were good in 2024. They were 15-11, had a second-round loss. Maybe not a team that had a lot of fireworks, but a team that was definitely on the up and up after having a 10-win season, let's say, in 2023. So then they come back in 2025 and win 22 games, and they beat we got a visitor. We are good. We are not live, but Cherry Hill West was a team that they beat 5-4. Haddon Township was a team that they beat. They won the William G. Rohrer tournament. But when you talk about Shalleck, there's obviously a lot of seniors that graduated from there last year. Luke Prokofsky is the far and away, the star that is now pitching pretty well at Penn. They just picked up a big win over Lehigh yesterday. He had a 1.08 ERA, and how about 105 strikeouts in his senior year over 51 innings? He was the star southpaw that brought Shalleck to that sectional final, and he pitched well in that sectional final as well. But now to have him gone, the pitchers that are going to replace him are either Jamari Whitley, who had a 1.54 ERA, and Evan Glassby, who had a 3.23. D'Agostino and Pokrovsky, your 2 biggest pitchers, are gone. If there's any silver lining for Shalleck, it's that they have that backup.
Yeah, this was an unbelievable season last year for Shalleck to win the sectional the first time in 33 years. I'm not worried about their pitching, as you mentioned. They got the guys that can pitch. Cole Hartley, 166 and 25 and a third last year. Hitting wise, they might lose a little bit, but Jamari Whitley, 351. Ricky Watt, a sophomore catcher and outfielder, 387. They got some guys that can mash the baseball. But do I think they go 8-0 in division play? Probably not. I think they lose more than 3 games. I mean, like, they challenged themselves last year, especially in that Rower tournament. 2 good wins over West and Haddon Township. This was a talented group last year, and I think they can be talented again this year. I don't know if they're going to win another sectional, but we'll see.
That's my thing about Shalleck is that they are still a good team even with Pokrovsky and D'Agostino graduating. But my thing is that Shalleck is ever so slightly on the way down, and then the other three, Woodstown, Glassboro, and Overbrook, are so far on the way up that I feel like they can pass them by a little bit. And maybe Shalleck's not; they're not going to finish at the bottom or anything, but they may not win the division. Woodstown went 5-3, Overbrook went 4-3 in division play, Glassboro went 2-5. So when you talk about division play, where does that land for Woodstown, a team that also had a relatively large senior class, but a class that wasn't nearly as significant as Shalleck's or Overbrook, for example, a team that didn't have. I mean, they had Caden Lawless, they had Charlie Snyder, they had a fairly large senior class, but again. None of the three teams we're going to talk about in a second here, Woodstown, Overbrook, and Glassboro, had a senior class that was as significant as Pokrovsky and D'Agostino and the rest of them for Shalleck. So, you could argue that Gavin Dillard was a big individual loss for Glassboro. You could argue that Caden Lawless was a big loss for Overbrook. You could argue a lot of different things, right? We could say a lot about that, but what we can't really say is that Shalleck is on the way out. We just have to say that the other teams are potentially on the way up. Is the question. Let's talk about Woodstown, 16-11, 5-3 under Mark DeCastro in the Tri-County Diamond. Had some fairly significant seniors graduate. Jack Holliday and Dante Holmes, a few of them. A couple big power bats. I think Woodstown definitely struggled at the plate more than they would have. I mean, Holliday and Holmes both had sub 500 batting averages, so you could probably make the argument that maybe they would have gone farther with better bats, but at the same time, they also upset Pennsville and they made it to the Group 1 semis over or versus Maple Shade. So, when we talk about Woodstown, it seemed like that their bats got hot at the right time. So I can't really, can I really blame them? Probably not. And they seem like they're a team that's going to be on the up and up, and they've got a lot of guys coming back. I'm excited to see Blake Bielecki come back. I'm excited to see Ty Koblenz. Ty Koblenz is very sneakily fast for a catcher like him, somebody who hit 324 last year but had 13 stolen bases. He's only I think 5'8", 5'9", but he's stolen 10-plus bases in every single season he's played for the Woodies, and he's been phenomenal for them.
Yeah, the Woodstown they could use some help this season at the plate. Like you said, they struggled a little bit, but they got hot at the right time. That's what matters in the end. All that you get hot at the right time and you make a deep run at the playoffs. And they had a big win over Pennsville, as you mentioned. I'm not worried about pitching. The whole roster seems like a pitch last year. There were at least 10 guys here listed on NJ.com. But for Woodstown, they got to beat Shalleck head to head if they want to climb in the division.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing for me for the Trico Diamond is again Shalleck is ever so slightly on the way down, and everybody else seems like they're on the way up. And again, Woodstown, they are still riding the not unfair for them to do so, but the 2022 state championship. I mean, that was an amazing team that they had. And the foundation of where they are today was laid in that team. Jack Holliday and Dante Holmes were freshmen at the time, didn't get a lot of at-bats, but you had guys like Brent Williams, who's now playing, or who was playing over at Hartford Community College, a Division I. You had Lucas Prendergast. You had Aaron Foote, who was a freshman, now graduated this year. You had Jack Knorr. There's a lot of names I can go on and on about that were solid on this 2022 team, rather, and they've been solid really ever since. They haven't had a down year really since then. They won 16 games in 2023. They won 18 in 2024, and then they pick up 16 more wins in 2025. So I expect more of the same from Woodstown, and I think if Shalleck has a down year, they are my number one to get the lead in the Tri-County Diamond. And that's to say, again, if Shalleck doesn't win.
Yeah.
If they fall behind, or if Woodstown wins that season series, then who knows? But they're a team that I think has the best resume to surpass Shalleck. And when we talk about Glassboro, one thing that I'll say is that they are a very young team.
Yep.
And a lot like Pittman, a very young team that has a lot of potential. But when you're young, things can either go extremely right or they can also go extremely wrong. and things can get mixed around in the kitchen, and you can have a poor season because of that, and it can cause a developmental setback. So with Woodstown, they seem like they have the most polished, ready to go resume to compete in the Tri County Diamond alongside Shalleck. And again, Glassboro could go on a crazy run. It wouldn't even be that crazy for them to go on
Yeah,
a run, but it would be a little bit more surprising, ever so slightly more surprising, to see Glassboro win the division over Woodstown.
I agree. I think Woodstown has been so consistent over the last few years, especially in that state championship run. But they're not going to fall back because they've been so consistent. They've won 16 games, as you mentioned, the last couple of years, and they just got to compete. They got to beat these head-to-heads, especially against their arch rival in Shalleck.
We were talking about the state champions. Let's talk about a team that made the state championship just 6 years ago. Dan Brown's Glassboro Bulldogs, now led by Anthony Korma, but they I think people forget they mercy ruled the sectional final 13-0 over Shalleck back in 2019. They scored 4 runs, or rather scored 9 runs in the fourth inning. They won 13-0 in that game. That was incredibly impressive for them to have. A 23-win season back in 2019. Anthony Korma, he took over in 2023, and in his first season, they went 14-10 after only winning 9 games the year before. But then they took a step back in 2024, only went 7-15, 11-12, better than 7 wins, and they played some solid competition as well. They played West Deptford, they played Triton, they beat GCIT just before the cutoff, which was a big boost for them in terms of power points. Wasn't enough to get them a home game, but they ended up picking up the 10 seed and then upsetting Riverside, and then losing by 5 to Shalleck in the South Jersey Group 1. The quarterfinal, and then they beat Pennsauken, another Group 4. So Glassboro is a team that we saw a game versus Woodstown for Glassboro last year. It was a frigid cold day, and it was 15-5 Woodstown. But I saw a lot of potential out of Glassboro in that game. They had 5 freshmen in their starting lineup, and they'll be bringing those freshmen back to be sophomores in 2026. And one of the best pitchers that I saw was Jude Dempster. 3 ERA, 49 innings as a freshman. You got to understand, there is a incredible trust that a head coach, and especially a fourth-year head coach, he was a third year at the time, now fourth-year head coach Anthony Korma has in his pitcher to have a freshman throw nearly 50 innings, and he's only getting better by the day. Obviously, Gavin Dillard was the number one guy. He ended up having a 3.72 mark, but Dempster along with Ryan Newell, who only had a 2.17 mark in nearly 20 innings, that is almost 70 innings of baseball that is either under a 3 ERA or just above a 2. That's pretty impressive for 2 freshmen in Newell and Dempster.
Yeah, I would agree. We talked about how Pittman's rebuilding. Glassboro rebuilt last year. I mean, like they had so many freshmen that played, freshmen and sophomores, that this rebuild is going well. Jude Dempster, he's a stud on
He's up to like 88, 89 already.
Yeah, he's a stud on the mound, and this Glassboro team, I think people are going to take for granted. This Glassboro team, we saw them. Now, it was a 15-5 loss. They had a couple things go wrong in that game against Woodstown last year, but this is a Glassboro team that can win, and I think they will.
And again, to be a team that is that freshman heavy, to be that young, and then still win 11 games,
One game under 500.
I think it's impressive. And then to get a playoff win in that regard, to be that experienced and to be that prepared for the big time, for the big show, that early in your career is only going to make Glassboro better from there on out. And again, they're only 6 years removed from a state championship appearance. They lost to Emerson Borough, but I think about what it took to get them to that point in the Group 1 rebuilding stage. 2017, they go 10-12. They were in the Tri-County Diamond. They, won 2 playoff games, one on the road, and then they ended up losing in the semifinal to Audubon. 2018, they go 16-10, a 6-win improvement, and then they make it to the sectional final, and they lost to Pennsville. And then in 2019, they go almost all the way. They go 18-5 in the regular season. They beat Leap, Pennsville, Gloucester, Shalleck to win the sectional final, and again to mercy rule in the sectional final in 5 innings. Then they beat Middlesex, and they fell to Emerson Borough 8-5 to finish the season at 23-6. A state championship team doesn't happen overnight, especially in baseball. And if they don't get to the sectional final this year, I predict that if this class of 2020 8, which would be the reigning freshmen now turning into sophomores. The class of 2028 is going to get to a sectional final, either in 26, 27, or 28. They're going to get there. Whether they win or not, I can't be that too far out. I can say that though. I can say though that I think that they're going to make it because they have this much raw talent. Uh, Looking at their 2026 senior class, what they have Connor Ritter coming up. They have William Boggins, who only had a handful of at bats, and then they had Aiden Evangelisti, who only had 7 innings. So you have a handful of seniors like Gavin Dillard, and we mentioned Colin Riley, and a handful of others, and I forgot about Evangelisti at the plate as well. Had 80 at bats last year. With Glassboro, there is a bit of an expectation that they're going to be good. But the question is, how long will it take them to get there, and will they be able to bring a ring home? Because I think that this team has the talent to do it. I said it back, I think, in the fall of last year. I opened up a Q&A on Instagram. I said, ask me anything you'd like about South Jersey baseball, and somebody said, who is a underrated team in Group 1, and the first name that came out of my mouth was the Glassboro Bulldogs, because I believe in this team. I think that they have so much talent. Korma's a young head coach, and one of the things about a young team is that they're very impressionable. And that's calling back to what I said earlier about it can either go extremely right or extremely wrong, and Glassboro seems like they're more likely to go in the right direction, but I don't know. I'm not a wizard. We'll have to find out by mid-April if they're going to be contenders or not.
Yeah, it may take another year. Who knows? But they have a lot of talent on this team. They're really well coached under Anthony Korma, and I think it's only up from here for the Bulldogs.
And then the last team we're going to talk about in the Tri-County Diamond before we not necessarily take a break, but we're going to talk about the upcoming schedule. It's going to be the Overbrook Rams, led by Coach Greg Himes. This is another team that had a fairly large senior class, but again, the seniors that they graduated are not players that were going to break the program, if you will. I think that this team had a lot of success, and they also impressed me pretty well. 14-11 last year. Started off the season 3-0 before losing 4 straight, and then they definitely struggled to rebound from that. They did pick up a 3-game winning streak to end the regular season, and then they had a playoff win, lost by 1 to Haddon Heights in the second round. But this is a team that probably, if you look at the numbers on paper, probably could have won more games than they ended up winning. They had a 331 batting average. That was better than Pennsville, a team that won the Tri-County Classic. They had a 2.86 ERA, right around the same mark as Pennsville, and just a little bit higher than Shalleck. So this team hit extremely well. James Green, in 11 at-bats, had 7 hits, 636 hitter. You had Chase Teramagra, a freshman, hit 400 in 10 at-bats. Those are guys that if they get more reps next year, those averages, if they hold, would be extremely helpful for them. But talking about the guys that started that had a lot more at-bats, the biggest freshman, or rather the biggest senior that they lost was probably Caden Lawless. He was a great outfielder, had a lot of speed on him, stole 12 bases last year. But one of the bigger names that we're talking about with stolen bases was Mike Rosano. 28 stolen bags for him and 121 for the team total, which was one of the top in South Jersey.
Yeah, this is an Overbrook team last year that took a really, really good Haddon Heights team down to the wire in the playoffs. It was a 3-2. I'm pretty sure it was actually a walk-off win for the Garnets. But Overbrook's got Tyler Wood back. He was unbelievable last year for the Rams. 48 innings, almost 800 pitches, a 1.90 ERA. He's a senior this year. They have Cooper Himes as well. They got a lot of guys, like you said, that can hit. This Overbrook team is another team that can compete for a championship in Group 2. Group 2 is so wide open. Obviously, Haddonfield is probably many people's favorite, Haddon Heights as well. But there's teams, Overbrook, Seneca, Collingswood. There's so many teams in this group that can easily win it if they get hot at the right time.
And exactly, I think that's what this season is going to be about, getting hot at the right time. We talk about Group 4. I think it's pretty clear cut that Eastern and Cherokee are going to be the top contenders there. And then if you want to talk about Group 3, Northern Burlington's going to compete in the central bracket, but looking at their schedule, I think that they're going to have a pretty good route to that sectional final as well. So when we talk about brackets in the South Jersey lower 4 that are the most wide open, I would say Group 2 is the most wide open of them. And like we said, they picked up a playoff win over Gloucester at home in the 7-10 game, won that game 5-1. And they stole 121 bases last year. That's best for fourth best in South Jersey. Pleasantville, Doan, and Buna were the only teams that were better than them in that regard. But then they were 10th in South Jersey in batting average last year with 331. And some of the teams ahead of them were some of the best in South Jersey. They were only one batting average point behind Gloucester Catholic, only two behind Cherokee, only three behind Eastern, and only four behind Holy Spirit. And obviously, Northern Burlington nearly hitting 400 as a team last year is not going to be forgotten. But then you look at their ERA, what they were able to accomplish with a 2.68 mark. That was still good for, where are they on my list? They had I must have messed up something with my numbers. They had a 2.86 ERA. My apologies. That's good for 20th best. Top 20 in South Jersey out of 90 teams. That's still a good percentile to own, and they're hanging right around the marks of Collingswood and Paul VI, Shawnee, Absegami. If you want to talk about Group 2 teams with the team ERA, the best Group 2 that there was Bordentown with a 2.39, but they were Central. So South Jersey Group 2, best team ERA, Seneca, 2.75. Overbrook was second with a 2.86. Cinnaminson was third with a 2.94. And then after that, you got to go up to, let's see who's up there. Lower Cape May, 3.57.
Cinnaminson's in Central.
In Central, okay. So yeah, the top three with ERA as pertinent to South Jersey Group 2 is Seneca, 2.75, Overbrook, 2.86, and then Lower Cape May, 3.57. That means that there's only two teams in South Jersey Group 2 that had a team ERA last year of 3 or lower. So you want to talk about consistency? If you want to win a championship in South Jersey Group 2, hammer in on your pitching. Get those runs off the board. Get your defense in check. And that might be what you need to get to a sectional final this year. If you're Group 2.
Group 2, to be honest with you, 1 through 16, I mean, like, it's open. I don't. Lower Cape May, they finished towards the bottom of Group 2 last year. They can obviously win. Gloucester had a down year. We talked about them in the last episode. If they get hot, it's about getting hot at the right time. This Group 2 is the most wide open group in the state, I think. I would have to look more.
I'd have to look a little bit more at the North Jersey.
North Jersey,
yeah.
But at least for Central and South Jersey, I think it is the most open group.
Yeah, and with, again, there's clear contenders at every stage. There's clear contenders at every group. But it depends on if you have it at the right time. And again, I don't want to compare different sports against each other. I don't want to put them up against each other. But after New Egypt won a sectional championship as a 14 seed, I am purely under the belief that anything is possible, right?
That's why I don't do predictions, because anybody.
I do that, and then I throw you under the bus for all the Barstool accounts. But I do want to highlight, while we have the time, some schedules, or I should say the schedule that we have. It's going to take us a minute to get it all set up, but we're not going to go through the entire schedule day by day for the entire episode. I think that would honestly be pretty obnoxious for us to do, and also it would probably take up all of the resources that we have to do it in the first place. So we are just going to look at, for now, the games that we have upcoming for next week, which would be March 23rd to March 28th. And again, I don't have a lot that I would say is set in stone as we get deeper into the season, but as we go along, I think as we record an episode, especially if we record an episode every week, that we would like to make this happen. So we're on the left side of your screen is the schedule. If you are listening and not watching, I'm just going to read it out. March 23rd, we have Wildwood at Bridgeton. March 26th on Thursday, we have Oakcrest at Buna. And not to be forgotten, but on the 24th and 25th, we have RCSJ Baseball. Those are two Division I JUCOs facing off against the three-time national champion Roadrunners. That's Lackawanna on the 24th and Hartford on the 25th out of Maryland. On the Friday, the 27th, we have BCSL Baseball between Northern Burlington and Bordentown. Saturday is Cumberland and Vineland. So we'll talk about those four games. First of all, starting with Wildwood and Bridgeton. Bridgeton to talk about next week's schedule. What did we say the tentative title was? Coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to be what it is. That's not going to be how it stays. I
That
think of
lasted long.
yeah, that's why it's tentative, right? Because it doesn't last very long. But no, Wildwood and Bridgeton got to speak with Mike Villella and Rich Hans, the two head coaches of Wildwood and Bridgeton. Very excited to see them at Alden Field on Monday. I believe the first pitch is scheduled for 4 o'clock. But one of the things about Bridgeton, they have not won more than 8 games in a season when Mike Villalla's been the head coach there, but he's been the head coach there for 23 years, since 2003. He has he has 88 wins with Bridgeton, and he has not won more than 8 in a season. So the one question that I say, comes to my head is, well, why do you stay? He's such a baseball mastermind that he's very in touch with the stats and the modern era of baseball. We got a 5-page report on the preseason form of how on how his team is going to perform. And the one thing I like about, not the one thing, but one of the things I like about Mike Villella is that he's very matter of fact. He's not going to prop up a program that isn't there, or he's not going to prop up a team that isn't there. He's going to be very honest, and he knows that Bridgeton is underrepresented, and that's why we're doing the live stream. Is that we haven't gotten to see Bridgeton before, and you can make your own assumptions about how they're going to play or what their regular season record is going to be, but I think it is important to get as many programs from either the top or the bottom represented, and this is a program that definitely deserves to have, for all the passion that the players have, for all the things that Mike Villella goes through to take care of his team. I think it's a team that deserves some recognition in the sports media world.
I would agree. I don't care if you're at the bottom. You're playing baseball at the end of the day. The kids are having fun, and I'm glad they have a program. Some teams are not fortunate to have a program. They don't have the numbers, and I think that's good that Bridgeton has it, and they're up and coming. So we'll see how it goes. It should be a decent game between between Wildwood and Bridgeton.
When these two played a few years ago, Wildwood took the win 13-1, but again, that's why it's opening day. You never know. Should be about 45 degrees at Alden Field, so he'll be on the call for that with me, so bundle up. But we're going to stick with the Cape Atlantic Conference on Thursday the 26th with a Cape Atlantic national matchup, Oakcrest and Buna. We'll know who has the advantage in the season series the day of, because they will have played the day before on Wednesday the 25th. That will be the second of the 2-game series. Honestly, I do like that with the Cal, is that you can see those teams 2 times in 24 hours, and you do have a good grasp of who you're going to throw in Game 2, almost like a doubleheader, if you will, except it's just there's a sleep in between it. But Oakcrest and Buna, we talked about them in the Cal previews. I think Buna is going to be a pretty good team this year, especially in a wide-open Group 1. Very excited to see who they throw out there, because that's going to be their second game of the year. And when you talk about the Cape, when you talk about what the Cape Atlantic League does for back-to-back matchups, you can't really space out your pitchers. And that's kind of why the Tri-County Conference wanted to experiment with that, with back-to-back scheduling for those purposes. Because when you have 2 teams that play each other twice in 24 hours, one at your home field, one at their home field, it makes sense that you want to have you want to have your number 1 pitcher for Game 1 and maybe your number 2 or number 3 pitcher for Game 2. But here's the thing: you can't see the same pitcher twice on a 1-day rest. So if your number 1 guy throws 5 innings, that's fine, but you're going to see somebody else the next day, and that's one of the things about the Cal that I really like.
I would agree with that. I do like that, because you don't see the ace 2 times during the season unless you meet in the playoffs, perhaps. But when I was at Seneca, like we played Morristown, we saw Ryan Lynch twice. Like the guys
it's now at North Carolina, yeah.
So I do like the Cal, and if the Tri-County's going to experiment with that, I think it's good. There's another league up in Central North Jersey that does it.
The GMC. Yeah, Greater Middlesex.
I think it's a good idea for the teams. It gives you a little balance there.
Mm-hmm. And then the matchup for this week that I am the most excited about is Northern Burlington at Bordentown. They're 2 division winners. Obviously, Northern Burlington did a lot more than win their division last year. 28-2, won the Group 3 state championship. But it's my first time seeing Northern Burlington since 2024. We actually didn't get a chance to see them in 2025, to my knowledge. But we saw them when I last saw Northern Burlington. It was when they were first on the upswing. And that was when they beat Cherokee in the first round of the Diamond Classic. Now, if you watch that game back, it was a 3-1 final. Northern Burlington played really good defense. Cherokee was a little bit all over the place. They didn't have a lot of control. They didn't have a lot of offense. And this was a Northern Burlington team that they had never played before. So when I look at that game, I I don't know if I would have thought that Northern Burlington and Cherokee would have been state champions just 2 years or just 1 year later in 2025 when I saw that game, and I think it was the last day of April in 2024. So to see Northern Burlington have this renaissance, to have them have a 28 win season, it's incredible. And then Bordentown, another very solid team, a lot of Division One talent. You had Luke Wire go to Delaware. They've got a lot of guys like Tyler Calora and the rest of them that they make for a good lineup. I don't know where, we talked about it eons ago in the BCSL preview, but these are two teams that are very solid, and when they played last year, it made for some good fireworks. I'm excited to see them again.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be a good matchup. I'm pretty sure it was yesterday. Northern Burlington scrimmage Shawnee. They beat them. I'm pretty sure it was 5-0. And Bordentown scrimmage Cherokee. So Bordentown, they're challenging themselves. I don't care if it's a scrimmage Cherokee, and then play
Exactly.
Northern Burlington. That's something.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a good game next Friday. There at a just beautiful complex
Oh
there
yeah.
at Bordentown.
Might be very windy though. There's a big open field behind it, so they do get the ball to fly out of the yard a little bit. But then the last game of the week that we have is Cumberland and Vineland, and there may be a change to the schedule, but we're going to stick it with Cumberland and Vineland for now. Vineland was fourth in the Cape Atlantic American last year. They were 16-11. But they played Cumberland on opening day, and this is another game that we saw last year, and we're going to be seeing the other end of it because Vineland was on the road versus Cumberland last year. Now it'll be the other way around over at Vineland High School. But the thing that I remember about that game was that there was definitely a lot of first week baseball, shining through the cracks. And what I mean by that is the defense wasn't all there. The offense was a little bit sluggish. Vineland scored 3 runs in the first inning and then scored 2 in the seventh. That's how they won 5-1. But the one RBI in that game came from Kevin Fiorani, who was a junior last year, going to be picking up. Going to try to get another good campaign going this year. We're going to talk about Cumberland when we get to the Tri-County Liberty, but he hit 425 last year, and I think that Cumberland definitely disappointed some last year. They were 5-19, which was down from 9 wins in 2024 and down from 13 wins in 2023. So if you're Kyle Daddario, definitely want to get back on the upswing, but this is a chance to prove yourself versus a Vineland team that they lost to by 4 runs last year before, unfortunately going on an 0-8 start. So hopefully Cumberland can impress on Saturday, and we'll be able to see them versus the Vineland Fighting Clan.
Yeah, it should be another good game to open up the season. Vineland, when we talked about them a couple episodes ago, they I think they're going to be really good this year. They got a lot of guys that can play. Mario Toro, who's unbelievable.
And committed to RCSJ Gloucester, yeah.
They got a lot of guys that can play. But Cumberland, hopefully they can bounce back. They had a rough year last year, and we're going to talk about them in a little bit.
Well, that's the end of our coming up segment. I don't know. I kind of like that name, coming up. I don't know. I can't decide, David. I can't decide.
Let the viewers decide.
I don't like them making a decision. Because if they made the decision, I don't know if we'd be on the air. No, but I joke that this is. I do want to say that I do appreciate all the positive comments. Dan McMaster reached out to me about the Olympic Colonial episode. Had some very nice words about it. And again, let me be clear when I make points about a certain team. I am not making points about your team or about anybody else's team to be overtly negative. Because in high school sports, the expectation is to be positive. It is interscholastic athletics, and at the same time, there is an expectation to win. So, you do walk as a sports media journalist, whatever you want to call the role that I have in sports broadcasting. Whatever you want to call it, you do have to walk a fine line, and sometimes it gets a little bit weird because when you have an expectation for everything to be positive, everything to be good, it does get lost in the mix sometimes. And how do I make a positive point about a team that's only won a handful of games? Well, we talk about the individuals that have done very well, or maybe they get back into it this year. So I apologize for sounding overly positive at times, but I also apologize for sounding overly negative at times because in high school sports, it's a very fine line to walk. When we look at, I was watching SportsCenter this morning, and they were talking about the women's basketball tournament because that's on ESPN. And one thing that stood out to me was that there was a game between a number 7 seed and a number 10 seed. I couldn't tell you what team it was, but the number 10 seed mathematically was under BPI, whatever that mathematical formula is.
Got
Had
me.
Yeah, I have no idea. Whatever the formula was to calculate their likelihood of going to the next round was 2% for a 7-10 game. And I was like, well, you're not exactly putting the team that's an underdog in very good light there. And maybe that's just a women's basketball thing. I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of NCAA women's basketball. Only a handful, but when we talk about sports at the college level, you're allowed to be critical. You're allowed to be maybe defensive or maybe um, painting a team in a negative light because that's what you truly believe. In this segment, in this podcast, we're here to promote the players. We're not here to put them down, but we also have to be realistic. We have to apply the expectations of real world athletics and real world baseball into our equation. So I can't sit here and say that a team that won 7 games last year is going to be a realistic title contender. But I also can't sit here and say that, oh, you won 7 games last year, you're not going to do anything. You're a bad team. I have to walk a fine line. So I appreciate either your patience or maybe your understanding in the fact that in high school athletics, even though the expectation is everything is positive, it's almost impossible to make that an actual reality with the fact that we are human beings. I can't look at a team that has a 200 or a 220 batting average and a 7 ERA and say, well, it looks like they're going to turn it around next year. I just can't. But we have to, as journalists, you do kind of have to bite around the crumble of the cookie to make ends meet with that. So I just wanted to preface that before we went on to this because I do think that sometimes I catch myself being too corrective with what I say. And I'm not going to go off the rails, like I said earlier, and be like, oh, this team's not going to have a chance. No, that's not what we're about. But at the same time, we do have to be realistic. And that's the one thing that I think I want to make clear before we get into the season and before we start talking about games, because there's going to be games between teams that are lopsided, and there's going to be 15-0 wins and 20-0 wins and everything like that. So I want to lay the groundwork a little bit before the season starts, and I want to thank you again for listening or viewing or I don't know, whatever it could be, manifesting the South Jersey Starting Nine podcast. Let's talk about the Tri-County Liberty. Delsey. I think Delsey is another team that does not need a introduction. 21-5, definitely had a strong run in the playoffs and early, though. Beat Highland by just 2 runs in the 3-14 game and got shut out at home versus Shawnee. Actually, no, we saw the same thing at the same time. That game was at Rutgers Camden. They were still the home team, though,
Yep.
and they still got shut out 5-0, and Shawnee ended up losing to Toms River East in the semifinal. So Delsey, though, 21-5. I would say for a first-year head coach in Vincent Lundino, that's a darn good resume, even though they went 27-4 under Joe Smith in their final year. They still started off the year 17-0, went undefeated in the month of April, and only picked up their first loss to a shocking loss to Cumberland in 10 innings.
Yeah, they didn't lose till May 8th.
May 8th.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
this team is stacked. Londino, a longtime assistant under Joe Smith, who's now at Mainland. He had a really good first year as a head coach, which is no surprise. He knows the program well, and I think when we talked about Paul VI, I think their new head coach, blanking on the name for some reason.
Nick Gruber.
Yeah, I think him having the ropes of the program will be good. But for Delsey, they lost Frankie Chiron, who was just stud, and we wish
One
him
of the best pitchers that we've seen in a long time, or at least in my time covering South Jersey. Obviously, we've seen some major leaguers come out of South Jersey, but I've been reporting on South Jersey baseball for 5 years. He's one of the best, if not the best, that I've seen.
Oh, 100%. He was amazing. But they got some guys coming back. The Harrison brothers. They're going to have to eat up some more innings this year. Pitching might be a little shaky for Delsey, but I think they'll get over that hump. They got some guys that can hit too. Ethan Du Bois hit 429 last year as a sophomore, 77 at bats. He's back again, obviously. But this Delsey team, I think they win this division pretty handily, and we'll see if they can make a better run in Group 3.
Yeah, how about Connor Harrison and Kyle Harrison, both committed to Franklin Pierce University, the Division Two rather. They have definitely, and I believe one of the Haddon Township pitchers is committed there, either Jack Jantorno or I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but one of the Haddon Township pitchers is also committed to Franklin Pierce. So in the Northeastern 10 conference, but Delsey again, 21-5 last year. It's kind of amazing to me how a 21 win season can actually be seen as a step back, and it is Jack Jantorner that's committed to Franklin Pierce. I just looked it up. So Delsey, again, 287 average, but a 1.35 ERA. They're definitely a team that could have slugged the ball a little bit more, but I'm not going to fault them for that because they play very tough competition, and they also play teams in the Tri-County Liberty that are very pitching forward, like Highland and Triton and Timber Creek. And then they also play guys like Gloucester Catholic and Kingsway and even out of conference, looking at their schedule from last year, they what was interesting to me was that they played Deptford, Highland, and Vineland in their first 3 games, and then Millville, and they didn't score more than 5 runs in any of those 4 games. And then they played Williamstown, beat them by 13, but during their 17-game winning streak that they had to open up the season, it took up most of their season. They didn't lose until
took to May.
They didn't lose until May 8th. During that 17-game winning streak, they only scored 10 or more runs. Let's see, 3, 4, 5 times. I think that's kind of why their batting average was as low as it was, because it was 287, but they still hit 8 home runs. Had 3 from Ethan Dubois, who's committed to Delaware. You had 2 from Cole Hudson, 2 from Charles Six. One was, in the diamond, one that I called versus Haddon Heights. But then you look at their ERA, 1.35. They don't really need their batting average to be that high when they have the 3rd best ERA in all of South Jersey. They had 243 strikeouts as a staff. That was best for 7th in South Jersey. And as we mentioned, they had the 3rd best ERA. And how about the fact that the top 4 teams in ERA in South Jersey, all Tri-County teams, GC, Pittman, Delsey, and Shalleck. So for expect more of the same. I think Ethan Dubois is going to have a great junior season. Obviously, the Harrison brothers. I love Kyle Harrison's style. He's a great southpaw. As a former left-handed pitcher myself in Little League, I was I am always definitely a fan of good left-handed pitching. But then you also have Austin Buchanan, who you lost, who had 430 average as a junior, only played 38 at bats though as a senior. I think had some kind of injury. Hit 316. Now he's over at LaSalle. This is a Delsey team that I feel like is kind of one of those teams that can have a big senior class and can always replenish year over year. They've just been that good for a pretty long time. So I would expect obviously more of the same here. I would say though, to counter my own point, in 2018 and 2019, they only had 7 wins each of those 2 seasons, and they went 7-13 and 7-14. So, as much as we talk about teams today that only won a handful of games, it seems like if you have the right developmental programs, my words are all in a bunch today. If you have a good program to get your teams back up and running once they get to the high school level, it seems like you can have some success.
Yeah, agreed. It's all reliable, in my opinion, on these youth programs, especially for these young guys that build them up and get them ready for the next level of baseball. In Delsey, they have a really good youth program over there. From my umpiring days, I had a couple of their teams, and they know how to play. But yeah, Delsey, they're going to be right around the same mark, I think, as last year record-wise, and maybe they'll go deeper in Group 3.
Who knows? But we are going to talk about the next up on the list. We are going to talk about the Highland Tartans. Finished 2nd in the division, and honestly had a pretty impressive rap. I think they had 12-10. They were pretty even on the road, pretty even at home, and again 7-3 in the Tri-County Liberty. But they had a lot of individual talent that went well, and I think this is another team that was definitely affected by a long losing skid. They lost. They lost 5 out of 7 games from April 22nd, or rather April 14th to April 30th. And then even though they riffed off 5 of 6 wins, 6 out of 7 wins to end their season, they went 6-1 in the month of May. Let's just say that to make it short. They still only finished with the 14 seed in South Jersey Group 3 and ended up falling to their own divisional opponent in Delsey. But another team that has a good combination of good hitting and good pitching. They had hit 268 last year, not too far lower than what Delsey had. And then they also had a 3.33 ERA, which was led by junior Logan Davenport and also a junior in Mike Romstead.
Yeah, Highland, they really lost one guy, Jack Wolfson, from the mound. They have a lot of returning pitchers, as you just mentioned. hitting wise, 268. Like you said last year, they slugged 368. They got some guys that can hit. Ian
Robeson.
Robeson. There we go. 400 average last season in 60 at bats. T.J. Phillips 289. So they got some guys that can hit. D.J. Gore's a really good coach. We'll see how Highland does, and they went 7-3 in division play. That's not too shabby.
Yeah, they have Jack. They had Jack Wolfson, who's now at Camden County under John Scanzano. But this is a team that's got a lot of juniors. And while I still think Delsey's going to win the division, I still think that Highland is going to make for a darn good second place team. And their focus is going to be, improving the power points and also, playing a little bit of tougher opponents. One thing that I will say as well is that Tri-County, specifically the Liberty Division, is adopting that Cape Atlantic style of division play where you play back to back. So they'll open up their season. Don't know. I don't think they're opening up their season with Cumberland because that seems a little bit late. But they'll have Cumberland back to back. They'll have Deptford back to back, and then Delsey, Triton, and Timber Creek. So while their schedule is not entirely focused yet, they have Sterling, Hamilton, Cinnaminson, and Kingsway in their non-divisional play. Kingsway obviously Tri-County, but probably the best team that they'll be facing in non-conference play as of now outside of the out-of-state teams is Hamilton that they'll have on Thursday the 23rd, and that's a part of the Coaches versus Cancer Classic. So to talk about Highland, again, another team that had a pretty solid season pitching-wise, 3.33 ERA. That's good for top 30 in South Jersey. Actually, tied for 30th with Mainland. So, again, another team that seems like they have a lot of potential. Had a decent amount of seniors. They had, not a decent amount, but they had a pretty small senior class, if you ask me, with really only Chase Dempsey and then Jack Wolfson. So you still have a decent amount of guys coming back for a large class of 2026. Logan Davenport is a junior. Trent Horton's a junior, now entering a senior season. Ian Robeson, as you mentioned, Mike Romstedt, Nick Witch as well. This is going to be a pretty heavy senior season for Highland, so dare I say make it or break it time in Group 3.
I would agree with that. Make it or break it time, definitely. And they got the talent, and I think they'll slide right in there at second place in the division. But just going back to your scheduling point for Highland, I do have a updated schedule here. It looks like Washington Township might have gotten moved up. They are playing Washington Township twice, March 27th and April 7th. They will open the season Friday home against Washington Township. Actually, both games, I don't know if that's a mistake, but both games are listed as home against Washington Township.
Yeah, that might just be a clerical error.
But Friday, Saturday, they'll play Washington Township and then Pennsville.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if Washington Township moves over to the Liberty. I don't know if it would be kind of a paradoxical question to ask if Washington Township is moving up to the Liberty, moving down to the Liberty, because there's two big school divisions and there's two small school divisions. But right now, if you're asking my honest opinion, I'd say that the Diamond is better than the Classic, and then the Royal's better than the Liberty. So I would say that it's kind of like a Cape Atlantic American and National situation where you're kind of moving. It would be like if Washington Township was in the, let's say, A division, and now they're moving to the B division. Not to say that the Liberty is a bad division, but I think that when the Royal has some of the best teams that the state has to offer, and then for Gloucester Catholic, one of the country's best teams, I think it's pretty clear to say that the Royal's the best division in the Tri-County. But let's talk about Timber Creek. We've got 3 Black Horse Pike schools back-to-back, all in the same school district. Timber Creek, though, first-year head coach in Miles Taylor, former pitcher for Timber Creek class of 2011, went to Coppin State, the Division I in, I believe, Maryland, to pitch in the Northeastern Conference. I'll be honest, I didn't have the time to look up his stats in college, but it also doesn't matter, his stats in college, because he's a new head coach for the Timber Creek team. Was led by John Cates dating back to 2016. Spent nearly 10 years there, but had a little bit of a struggle getting over the hump. Was 11-14 last season, 6-4 in the Tri-County Liberty. I think with this being one of the newer head coaching changes, again, we have not had nearly as many coaching changes in South Jersey as we did last year. I could probably name, 7 or 8 off the top of my head from last season. There was the ACIT head coach. There was obviously the big story with Joe Smith to Mainland from Delsey. You talk about, what are the other ones I'm thinking of? Alex Injayan going to Cinnaminson. There's a boatload more, but to hear this, I mean, it's only 2 that I can think of. Paul the Sixth and Timber Creek. That's really about it. So a lot of people staying put for 2026 here. But for Timber Creek, 255 average. One guy that I really enjoy watching is Anthony Hedenberg, 2.76 ERA. Really strong kid, 20 Ks, 38 innings, and had the second most pitches out of anybody on this team except for Braden Simpson, who's a senior. They had Simpson throw 54 innings last year, and it seemed like Hedenberg was the number 2 guy in that rotation. He's almost certainly going to get moved up to the number 1 spot. But they had a decently large senior class last year, but a lot of sophomores turning into juniors, setting up for a big class of 2027. Ryan Dabrowski, who I highlighted in our underclass segment back in the summer, hit 293 as a good catcher for these guys, kind of backing up Braden Simpson. But if Simpson was pitching, Dabrowski would have caught. But then you have another guy like Colin Keene, who's a senior this year, and Tyler McCullough, two pretty versatile guys who are going to lead the class of 2026. But then the seniors are as follows: Tyler Ramirez, Cole Scanlon, Braden Simpson, Chase Smith, and Nick Trainer. That's 5 pretty high-level seniors that are losing from this Timber Creek team. So Miles Taylor, without a doubt, going to have his hands full in his first year.
Yeah, agreed. He's going to have his hands full. I think this is another team in the Tri-County that might be entering that rebuild stage with all the seniors they lost last year. They lost a lot of guys that ate up a lot of innings, like you mentioned, Simpson, 54 innings last season. But they got some guys that can still hit, as you mentioned. But Timber Creek, I think it's a rebuilding season, and I still think they might finish third in the Tri-County Liberty, but we'll see what happens.
We'll have to see as well. And again, first-year head coach, you never really know what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's baseball no matter what. And there was only 2 teams out of 6 that finished above 500 in the Tri-County Liberty, and we'll get into the teams that had rebuilding seasons last year and are going to try to build off of that to have some better years in 2026. Starting out with the third out of 3 Black Horse Pike schools. That's Triton and the Triton Mustangs over in Runnymede. 5-16 record last year under Ray Traley, who is now in his 3rd season, or will be entering his 3rd season with Triton. Of course, he had some years over at Lindenwold when they had a program. He's now found himself in Runnymede, and they started off all right. They were 4-3. Or rather 4-4 as of April 19th. They beat Deptford, Highland, Cumberland, and Glassboro, and they lost to Gloucester by 1 run in the Jim Kelly final. It was a walk-off for Gloucester that won the game, but then they lost, I believe it was 10 games in a row, if I'm reading right. They lost, actually it was 12 games in a row. I apologize, 12 games in a row. Then they beat it with a win over Delsey, 3-1. That's the thing that confuses me so much about this Tri-County Liberty, is that Delsey has 2 divisional losses, and you would have thought that it would have been against, either a Highland or a Timber Creek, but no, they lost to a 5-win Cumberland team, and they lost to Triton. Both games were before the cutoff, so they definitely affected Delsey. They might have been if you ask me, they might have been a number 2 in South Jersey Group 3 over Toms River East if they had won those games, and you never know what could have happened in that bracket if they were a number 2 or a number 1 seed in Group 3. So, whatever. It's a lot to digest, but either way, they lost a lot of close games, and that's one thing that I'll give them credit for. Their losses that they did have, 3-1 to Williamstown, solid Tri-County Royal team, would have been another Group 4 win. Timber Creek, they lost by 1 run. Cherry Hill East, a solid Olympic team. They lost that game by 1 run. Deptford, they lost by 2. Hamilton, they lost by 1. Washington Township, they lost by 2. And Cumberland, they lost by 1. So, you talk about Triton, you talk about a team that only won 5 games last year. I saw them for one of their 5 wins, which was during that early April stretch. They beat Highland 2-1. That was a game that was a star performance from Justin Garcia through 6 innings in that game. It was scoreless until the 7th. Triton put up 2 runs in the 7th. Highland put up 1 in the bottom half, and that's how the final score was. But a 2.08 average and a 4.55 ERA. That ERA isn't even that high for what it's worth at the high school level, but that batting average is something they got to work on. I mean, the best guy that they got coming back, probably Dylan Bernard, 255 hitter. This is a team that only walked 41 times, only stole 44 bases. The offense definitely lagging behind, but they're going to try to get that pitching over the fence. And again, they lost a lot of their games by very close margins last year versus Group 3 and Group 4 opponents. So I think that they have the potential to get better. They just have to, take it day by day, game by game, and figure it out on their own.
You said it perfectly. Game by game, they got to take it. They lost a lot of close games that can hurt a team's morale easily, especially that long losing streak they had. But if the bats get hot at the right time, they might finish with a couple better wins there in division and out of the division and maybe improve a little bit.
Yeah, and again, they had the sixth lowest batting average of any team in South Jersey, and they were the lowest of a team that made it over the Mendoza line. So Triton, decently high senior class. They had Chase Walsh, who was a pretty good prospect. Like to watch him play. Justin Garcia was a senior that again pitched really well. I would have liked to see him a little bit more, but he's graduated now. So the best guys that they have left on their pitching staff is Jason Gillen, who had 24 innings last year, and then Dylan Bernard, who also had 24. Both commanded either close to a 4 or a sub 4 ERA. Bernard specifically 22 Ks, 2.84 ERA. But for Triton, they're still figuring things out, and as I look at their schedule, as I look at what they're taking care of, they're playing Cherry Hill East again. They're playing Haddon Heights again. They are on the road at Absegami. Let's see, they're playing CCTS, another solid team. Gloucester, and I believe that is a part of. Actually, Gloucester was the opening game of spring break, and then they opened up their season on Monday versus Del Rand. So they actually don't play their first divisional game until the 14th of April once they're 3 games into the season. So it'll be a little bit interesting to see how Triton works it out, see how this complicated Tri-County Liberty goes. Again, it's going to be a lot like the Cape Atlantic National, where there's, I think, going to be one team at the top, and then everybody else is going to fall in line. So we'll flip that back over to talk about Deptford, the Deptford Spartans. 8-15, 3-7 in the Tri-County Liberty. Last year started out 2-6, picked up 3 out of 4 wins in late April, and then had a bit of a sluggish end of the season. Lost 6-0 to Mainland. They barely made the playoffs. They were the 16 seed in South Jersey Group 3. Fell to Mainland in a shutout effort, but led by Dave Prager, this is a team that will definitely be, again, another one that had a rebuilding year last year with 8 wins, going to try to get on the up and up this year.
Yeah, this is another team that struggled a little bit at the plate. Pitching wise, Manning Carr, he's going to be back 36 innings last season. They lost some of their top hitters. Cole Judge hit 458 last year. He was a senior. But yeah, another team that's trying to improve little by little each year.
Yeah, this is a team that has not climbed above 9 wins since Dave Prager took over the head coaching reins in 2022, preceding him with Anthony Leone. They won 3 games in 2021, and probably their last over 500 season was 2017. They went 17-7, and they made it to the South Jersey Group 3 final, falling to Highland. So again, that's another chapter in the book of any team can get hot at the right time, or any team can build up a successful program, even if their program is not successful right now. So the games that they did play, 4-0 loss to Delsey, held them to 4 runs, 3-2 loss to Clearview. There are some games that are prettier than others, if you will, but as it goes, 8-15, that's still the 4th best overall record out of 6. You had Triton and Cumberland finish beneath them. I think the player that I'm most excited to watch is probably going to be David Nochi. Got to see him a little bit last year in the recruiting world, and he seems like a pretty good bat. Somebody that's going to be swinging for a decent amount of power. I think he's going to be somebody to watch out for Deptford. But again, one man can't carry the team. I think that Deptford's going to have another rebuilding year. And again, it's been 9 years since they've had an over 500 season. I'm not entirely counting them out, but we'll have to see if the results can back it up for the Spartans. And then our last team in the Tri-County Liberty, before we go over into the home stretch with the Royal, is the Cumberland Colts. We talked about them a little bit in the first half. 5-19 last year, 2-8 in the Tri-County Liberty. They started off the season 0-8, which is not a mark that anybody wants to start off with, but they beat Delsey, and they played some of the other teams in their non-conference slate pretty darn well. They also beat Pennsville 2-1. That was another extra innings game. This is a team that will, even win or lose, they will drag you down to the wire, and they will make sure that any win that they get will be a hard fought win. Again, 2-1 over Delsey in 10-9 over Delsey in 10 innings, 2-1 over Pennsville. They had a 2.49 average last year, 6.20 ERA. Best pitcher I saw for them last year was probably Tyler Condera, 3.82 ERA. Also Mark Soy, but he's a graduate now. He graduated. Ethan Cruz, not too bad as well. This is a team that has the pitching. They've got a lot of guys coming back. Like I said, Holt, Condera Jr., or rather Condera, Daniel Orr, Landon Oswald, and Peyton Brenner. That's a good chunk. That's 5 junior pitchers in the class of 2026 that Cumberland's going to use with Kyle Daddario to kind of hold down the fort here.
Yeah, the pitching, they got some guys coming back, but for the offensive wise, they got some guys that could hit. It was an underperforming year last year for them, but I think that the senior class might be able to pick them up a little bit. Josh Bodine hit 348 last year. I don't know if I'm going to say this name right, but the Fiorani brothers.
Fiorani.
Fiorani brothers.
Yeah, we just talked about them in the first half.
Yep. Hit 306, 425. So these guys can hit, and if the pitching steps it up a little bit, 6.20 team ERA, that's a little high for my liking.
I think it's a little bit too high for anybody's liking. Let's just say,
especially the coach. But Cumberland, if they pick up some more of those shocking wins, they can maybe climb in the division race.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even if they weren't individually all that successful, they were a bit of a spoiler team last year. They handed Pennsville one of their only 8 losses, and then they handed Delsey one of their only, I believe it was 7 losses. So we'll flip over to the Tri-County Royal. We've got about 20 minutes before we got to wrap up this episode. So Gloucester Catholic, the Rams. I don't think that they are a team that needs any introduction. They're actually playing in North Carolina right now, or either right now or next week as a part of a national tournament. I think that just shows how good they are. They're playing over there with some of the best teams in the country, some of the best prep academies and Catholic schools. They were 24-3 last year, and obviously when we talk about Gloucester Catholic, part of the names that come to mind are. I had this discussion with Chris Baker a few months ago. Is the 2019 or mid to late 2010s Gloucester Catholic teams would beat handily the 2020s Gloucester Catholic teams, but I would say in 2026 that will be one of the few exceptions. This is an incredibly impressive senior class coming in. You've got Noah Danza committed to Auburn. You've got you've got Guy Lynham. One of the two. I don't know why I'm flipping it. I think that Guy Lynham's the one. Now I got to look it up. But let's say the one that we do know, Braden Lipoff, committed to East Carolina,
Yep.
top program in the American. And then for the guys that they did graduate, you had Jack Mastero, who had 457, now at RCSJ Gloucester. You had Jude Morgan coming in now as a senior. He's got a 0.32 ERA. This is a team that had the lowest ERA in South Jersey with a 1. 1.00 was their ERA. It's incredible. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. But again, this is Gloucester Catholic. This is the expectation.
It's no shocker. I mean, like, they have just been good for decades. Dennis Barth is an unbelievable head coach.
One of the best of all time.
Yep. Another senior, Jason Bogart. He can hit a little bit, but Gloucester Catholic, they're challenging themselves this year. They always do. St. Augustine early in the season, Jackson Township, Hun. And the best game of the year probably is going to be April 19th, 1 o'clock, Governor Livingston, Gloucester Catholic. What an unbelievable game that's going to be. We talked about that in the very first episodes. I cannot wait for that, and hopefully I get to see it maybe in person.
Yeah, even though we won't be able to get there, I mean, by the way, to clarify, Lynham is the one committed to Auburn. Noah Danza is committed to Mississippi State. I believe he flipped his commitment from somewhere. Oh, yeah, he was originally committed to Virginia and then flipped his commitment to Mississippi State. But, yeah, I mean, looking at their schedule, it's top of the line. But, again, that's what's expected. Hun School to open up their season. Then Jackson Township. St. Augustine on the 8th of April. Governor Livingston, St. Augustine again in the Coaches versus Cancer at Margate. I mean, that was a cinematic game last year. Going to be another one again. Holy Ghost Prep out of Pennsylvania, Steiner, and then there's the rest of their schedule still being filled out. But again, when you're a team that's this good, how much more do you even need to prove yourself is the question. But I'm looking back at the 2019 team, the team that they had, went 8-0 in the Tri-County Classic, went 20-6. You have Ryan Nutley, who ended up going to Xavier and Westchester, ended up settling down at Rutgers Camden. You had Anthony Salamedo, who is another fantastic pitcher who found his way, to wherever he is now. You have Luke Lesh, who is a star in the Tri-County League. And then the Tyler Cannon and Justin Costanzo. There are so many names that if you know what you're talking about in South Jersey, they are household names. And you know, to make a point out of Anthony Salamito, what he's doing now, he is one of the top pitchers in the Pirates minor league organization. He struggled a little bit last year. He hasn't gotten above Double A yet, but he's only 22 years old, and he was 23 as of last December. But again, when he transferred to Bishop Eustace, he got his start at Gloucester Catholic, and it still deserves some credit for that. He had a 2.53 ERA with a combination of Altoona and Bradenton for the Pirates last year. So, when you talk about Gloucester Catholic, the expectation is success. 24-3 is another season in the books for them. It's another state championship, and I hate to downplay these guys, but you can't expect less than that from them. As much as I'd love to say, oh, they're the best team in South Jersey, they're gonna have the best roster. Here's the thing: everybody knows that,
Yep.
so you can't get excited about it because everybody knows it. And the only question is where are they going to fall in line, and where is everybody else going to fall in line? So,
Yeah, like we talked about, can some of those other teams in that non-public group get over the hump? Can Bishop Eustace finally get their sectional championship? Maybe Holy Spirit as well.
yeah, I mean, Holy Cross won a sectional championship and a state championship back in 2016. So that's why we say anything is possible. Programs that won a state championship when I first started reporting in 2021, 2022, some of them are still doing good, some of them are just hanging around, or some of them have fallen off now. So it really is a matter of time. This is a 4-year cycle, and you got 4 years to either get it right or get it wrong, and that's exactly how it's going to be. Let's talk about Kingsway. I think, again, another team that needs at least a little bit of an introduction, but maybe not a extended introduction, because a lot of people know Bill Alvaro, nearly a 500-win head coach, may reach it this year. I believe he's somewhere around the 480 mark. Spent a lot of his time at Washington Township. He is now entering what I believe is his 8th season with Kingsway. 17-9 last year, 6-4 in the Tri-County Royal. 2 of those losses were to GC. We covered both ends of that season series last year, and we're going to be covering it again. Listen, I'm sorry. I'm looking at they were 20-7 last year. I apologize. Not 19-7. That was 2024. 2025 they were 20-7, 7-3 in the Tri-County Royal. Made it to the second round of the Diamond, lost to Audubon, but made it to the semis of South Jersey Group 4. Got run-ruled by Cherokee by a score of 11-1. Again, Cherokee's just Cherokee. They're doing their thing, but Kingsway's got a lot of high talent. They had Dylan Rickards, who graduated last year. He's now playing for Wilmington University, the Division II, but they had a 2.47 ERA, 304 batting average, and they've got some good guys coming back. Austin Schmidt's got a lot of power. Nate Bott committed to Delaware. He's doing pretty good. Christian Finelli hit over 300 last year. Ashton Ford hit 322 last year as a sophomore. A.J. Ward hit 233, but he's a very good defensive catcher. They had Cam Stevenson, who graduated. He's now at Rutgers Camden. Again, this is a team that I don't think needs a lot of introduction, but they've just got a stacked roster year over year, and they continue to have it this year.
Yep, this is another talented team in Group 4. They need to get over the humping Group 4, though. I mean, like Cherokee and Eastern have just dominated that group, and Egg Harbor you can add in there too, making it to that sectional final a couple years back. But they got Kevin Maxim on the mound, 35 innings as a sophomore last year, .80 ERA. They got a lot of kids that can mash the baseball at the plate. We'll see if they can beat Gloucester Catholic head-to-head. I mean, like, it's possible. Clearview last year, who we're going to talk about in a second, they beat them. So we'll see what happens there. But Kingsway, they are just so talented and a deep roster every single year.
Every single year, that's exactly right. And again, Kingsway is a team that has proven that they can play on the big stage, and whether or not they'll get over the hump in South Jersey Group 4 is something that remains to be seen. But this is a team that I'm going to be very excited to see, as I am excited to see the Clearview Pioneers every single year. But Clearview, third-year head coach now for Nick Core, and we interviewed him in the first episode of the series. And I promise we will get around to interviewing some more people as we get along, but it's hard to get schedules coordinated. Like right now, it's just about noon on a Thursday. People work. People have jobs.
Really?
Yeah, shockingly, yes. Um, no, but a lot of these guys are like school teachers and stuff. But Clearview 17-10 last year, 8-2 in the Tri County Royal. We should have covered them first, in front of Kingsway because they were 8-2, but disregard. Another team that seems like they are on the up and up. They won 15 games in Nick Core's first year. They only went 9-13 in Derek Reagan's last year there. So they have a lot to like. Chase Cardeal is the kind of guy that I think is going to have a huge season for them. Class of 2027 junior. Along with that, Alex Moisenberger coming back, another great defensive catcher. Also had a home run for a Clearview team that left the yard 10 times last year. Their big loss, though, is Braden Reeder, at least one of them, Braden Reeder and Tyler Dell. Tyler Dell now getting some valuable playing time at Montclair State, and then Braden Reeder over at Jefferson in Philadelphia. I mean, Pat Jurgen coming back, 3.62 ERA, only had 10 innings of work, but his younger brother Josh, a freshman, had 37 innings with a 3.22 mark. This is a team that had an ERA as a team of 3.22, and they're looking to make another splash here in 2026.
Yeah, when we interviewed Nick Core, he seemed really excited about his group and how they have come so connected in such a short time, and I'm really excited for him too. This is a team that can do damage at any point. Uh, Group 3, they lost last year in the quarterfinal round, but maybe they go deeper this year. They had that upset 2 years ago, I think it was, against Shawnee. Um, we'll see what they
Yes.
we'll see what they can do. 289, Damba Bate, he's pretty good. They have some pitchers, but
And he's committed to Camden County College, too.
you mentioned they lost Tyler Dell. That's a huge loss. He really good. 41 in the third innings last year with a 1.86 ERA. With the Jurgen brothers, we'll see what they can do. Clearview, I expect them to be right around the same mark again.
And this is another team that schedules very ambitiously. They're playing Bridgewater Raritan in mid-April. They're scheduling Egg Harbor Township on the road. They've got Audubon, which will be there for non-conference play on the 31st of March. They've got Vineland. They've got Delran. They've got St. Augustine on the
Haddonfield.
last day. Yeah, Haddonfield on the last day of the regular season. This is a program led by a coach that doesn't like to mess around, and he's somebody that is certainly not going to take his team's chance for granted because he knows that he's got a pretty big senior class in 2026. And again, this is a team that I am very positive about going into the season. We've got three more teams, and then our preseason coverage is done, and we can put it to bed. The first team that we're going to look at is going to be GCIT. The GCIT Cheetahs, led by Coach Rob Eppolite, went 11-13 last year, 3-7 in the Tri County Royal. I think tech schools are a program that is a little bit harder to judge because some of their wins come from the NJ TAC tournament. That when you play those guys, it's like they're teams that are so far away that you can't get any mark or judge on them at all. Because they won the NJ TAC Group 3 and 4, the NJTAC, they beat in the first round. It was I can't see who they beat. It was Penn Tech. Okay.
Payne.
Oh, Payne Tech.
Yep.
Yeah, that was in the semifinal, and they beat Bergen Tech to win it. Those are two wins over teams that I personally have never seen play. So it is a little bit different. It is a little bit it is a little bit complicated to judge, but this is a team that definitely picked up some unfortunate losses last year. They lost to Sterling 3-1, but Sterling also was having a great Renaissance season. Went 19-7, lost to Cinnaminson, got run ruled by Gateway in the in the Joe Lang tournament over at Pittman. This is a team that I think could have finished over 500 if they had some of those wins back. But the big part of GCIT's season was that upset win over Rancocas Valley, beat them 3-2, picked up again a fantastic playoff win. It's hard to win in the first round on the road. It's hard to win versus a 3 seed that you got to play over 45 minutes away. That was a big one that they ended up winning, and then they got shut out by Vineland 4-0. I can't be too mad at them for that. But the big highlights that they have are Alex and Andrew Valet. Both are committed to Rhode Island. I believe Andrew was the one that was originally committed to Notre Dame.
Correct.
But he flipped his commitment to be a little bit closer to home, and Valet had a 0.93 ERA last year.
Yeah, they got their top two arms back, Andrew Valet and Zach Hahn. Hahn 1.74 ERA and 44 in the third innings. Like you said, this team could have easily finished over 500 last year. They had a couple tough losses. Washington Township they lost to, and that run rule over Kingswood. This GCIT team, Group 4, is a really tough group, as we mentioned, but in the Tri-County Royal, maybe they can win a couple more games this season and have to win those games that they are projected to win to finish over 500.
Exactly. And again, this is a GCIT team, 3.8 ERA, 2.6 rather 2.261 batting average. For their ballpark, they hit in a very different ballpark, let's say. Not hitter nor pitcher friendly. It's definitely more neutral. But they had Willie Popoff, 3 homers last year, 13 RBIs. He's a very strong catcher, somebody who just mashes the ball. Definitely a little bit of a bigger figure. I believe the younger brother of Tommy Popoff, who used to be over at Kingsway. Very local product, and I forget where he's committed, but he is a very strong catcher as well. And again, a catcher who can hit for power. That's always very welcome. And he is he oh guess where he's committed? Franklin Pierce. So Franklin Pierce is picking up a lot of South Jersey talent. But two more teams to go. We're going to talk about Williamstown first. Under Jim Slade, we will see Williamstown in mid-April versus, I believe, GCIT. So they went 9-16 last year. There were two teams in the Trico Royal that had under 10 wins, and Williamstown with one of them. But this is a Williamstown team that it has been has been decently impressive over the years, and also likes to play not a lot of non-conference opponents. They played Absegami last year, St. Joe's Hamilton, Ocean City, Cherry Hill West, to name a few. Cherry Hill East, another one. ACIT. They'll play a little bit of everybody. They'll punch a little bit up. They'll punch a little bit down. They'll do a little bit of everything. But a 2.47 average and a 5.31 ERA. I'm not too thrilled by those numbers, but obviously, I think when you talk about Williamstown, got to talk about Jimmy Gallagher, what he's going to do. I believe he had a handful of injuries during his junior season. He's committed to Appalachian State, transfer from Gloucester Catholic, coming into Williamstown last year. He's going to have a chance to prove it in his senior year with Williamstown.
Yeah, he had a rough year last year, but the Appalachian State commit, I'm not worried about him. Hopefully, he has a big senior year, and I think that's a big climb for Williamstown. They also have Matt O'Rourke, 33 and 2/3 last year, 2.08 ERA. Offense wise, sorry, freshman Caleb Lopez, he struggled a little bit last year. The offense was a little rough, and I think that's what held him back. So if they can get some bats going, I think they can climb and improve a little bit.
Yeah, and then I look at somebody like Braden Kearney, had a 2.36 ERA in 32 innings. And then you have Matt O'Rourke. This is going to be a team that is going to really rely on their pitching, and that's after graduating Jake and Josh Manganiello. Josh Manganiello was the pitcher, and then Jake Manganiello was the catcher. He's now at LaSalle, but you've got a lot of guys coming back. You've got Braden Kearney, who again was a solid two-way. You've got Ryan Walker coming back for his senior year. You've got Marco Colbert coming back for his junior year. Anthony DeCiriano, their biggest senior that they graduated was probably Aiden Davidson, but again, this is a team that definitely struggled at the plate. Would have liked to see a little bit of a lower ERA from them, but I'm looking at the fact that if Jimmy Gallagher had no injuries during his junior season, this team would have not had a 5 ERA as a team.
Yep.
And then you combine that with the fact that Braden Kearney has a sub 2.5, Matt O'Rourke has a 2.08, and then what about the other guys that are more projectable and had more innings? Caleb Lopez and Ryan Walker had an ERA in the 6 range, but they pitched about 20 innings, and they're going to have to pick up the slack after those 3 guys. So when you have a solid rotation of 3 guys, Gallagher, Kearney, and O'Rourke, I think they're going to be pretty solid, and I would honestly say that Williamstown, if they can get their hitting figured out, they're going to be a pretty underrated team in Group 4.
I would agree with that. They got 3 good pitchers, as we mentioned, and that's a big climb. And if Gallagher stays healthy this year, he throws really hard. Williamstown, they definitely can maybe upset a couple teams along that Group 4.
Yeah, and they've got, again, a pretty solid non-conference schedule as well. Obviously, they host the Steal Your Base Classic in mid-April. That's a fun one. But as it goes, we've got one more, David. We've got the Washington Township Minutemen. We'll be seeing them in the first weekend of April versus Deptford in Tri-County crossover play. This is another team that has played a lot of very tough teams in non-conference play. They played ACIT. They played Cherokee, lost that game 11-3. They actually ended up facing Cherokee twice. They were the number 16 seed in South Jersey Group 4. Also played Millville, Cherry Hill East, Woodstown. Let's see who else they played. They played Ocean City. A lot of teams have played Ocean City in the Tri-County. I'll tell you, they have had a lot of success that way. But for Washington Township, 8-16. Bob Kelly's led some good teams over the years. I would say 2024 was a decently solid team. They went 15-15, but they also had Jared Dziergowski, who ended up having a good collegiate start. Chris Smith, who's now at Rutgers Camden. What's it called? And then now they've got Luke McKenty entering his senior year, who is a commit to Rowan University. Got to see him pitch in that playoff game versus Cherokee. He definitely held this roster down, not in a bad way, but in a good way. He held the fort down. But him combined with most likely their number 2 guy is going to be Peyton Andre, who's a fantastic two-way player, 407 hitter as a sophomore, 2.44 ERA as a pitcher. There's not a lot of guys that are going to do it better than Peyton Andre in 2026.
Yeah, he's a stud for Washington Township, and hopefully can have another solid campaign for them. Another guy I'm looking at to mix in for pitching is Reed Miller, 0.75 ERA last season. They had some guys that hit the ball, like you said, Luke McKenty, Josh Lynch, 245, Giovanni Cristanino, 420 average. So they got some guys that can hit. I'm honestly surprised they finished 8 games under 500. I mean, like, they play a tough schedule, and they're in a really tough group.
Yeah, it's hard to win the Tri-County Royal when Gloucester Catholic's in your camp, but best you can do is try to get a good rebound and try to get something going. But again, I'm very excited about McKenty and Peyton Andre, especially considering Andre's class of 2027. He's going to have a lot of potential. He's going to have a lot of projectability for Washington Township. Again, in another pretty neutral park in terms of hitter-pitcher friendliness.
Wonky park.
It is an interesting park, I'll say that. We've done a lot of Summer League games there for the Washington Township Senators, who made the Tri-County Summer League Carter Cup final last year. But 21 teams done, down, and gone. We have finished the preseason, not rankings, but preseason projections and previews for the 2026 season. Boy, that was a gauntlet.
Yeah.
I mean, the easiest one might have been the BCSL because we were able to combine it in the second half of an episode, but the Cape Atlantic had to be its own thing, the Colonial and the Olympic had to be its own thing, and then this was its own thing, and it took almost 2 hours.
Like a marathon.
Listen, the episodes only get easier from here, right? Except they don't, because when we get in season action, you never know what's going to happen. So never know who's going to win on any given day. To the teams that we will see later on this season, we wish you the best of luck in your opening campaign. Obviously, a lot of teams aren't playing their first game for another 2 weeks. We get our first action of real baseball on Monday with Wildwood and Bridgeton. Again, we're going to pop up that schedule one more time of our schedule for the rest of March. It's a total of 6 games. Wildwood, Bridgeton Monday, Oakcrest, Buna on Thursday, Northern Burlington and Bordentown on Friday, and then tentatively Cumberland, Vineland on Saturday. Still have to get that one confirmed. But thank you all for listening and or watching the South Jersey Starting 9 podcast. I hope that I put your team in a good light, and if I didn't, I hope your team has a good 2026 and does better than I projected them to be. I think that's a fair note to end it on, as we don't know when we'll be live next. We don't know if we'll be live next or if this will be another pre-recorded episode like today. Again, this is being recorded right around noontime on Thursday the 19th. You're going to be listening to this later tonight. But with that being said, when we'll be live next, we don't know. But what we do know is that it will be when games have started for the South Jersey baseball season in 2026. Thank you very much. This has been episode 7 of the South Jersey Starting 9. I'm your host, Dan Wilkins, joined by David Cohen. We will see you next time. Thank you very much.